How do you feel? Super Bowl Sunday.
Super Bowl Sunday. I feel good. I mean, I didn't really care too much about either of the teams. It's honestly, I don't really care about any teams because there's no teams from my hometown. So it's like,
Yeah, is football kind of hard for you?
I mean, it's just, I don't really have a team that I've always kind of been a bandwagon of players.
Right.
I've never really been a team bandwagon where it's just like, oh, like this team's super good, let me jump on and celebrate. But I've always loved specific players. Like I loved Peyton Manning. I loved Adrian Peterson. So I just followed them and liked watching them. So I loved the Colts for a long time. But
That's how I feel about Larry Fitzgerald. It's just very lucky that he ends up to be on my hometown team.
Yeah.
Because Larry Fitzgerald is such a cool guy.
He is a cool guy. He's one of those guys
Also-
that like everyone likes.
Yeah. I've seen him in person. I've also seen his wife in person, and his wife's calves are fire. Just saying.
Yeah, tell him the story that you missed out on meeting Larry Fitzgerald because you were watching his wife's calves too.
Yeah, I was mesmerized by his wife's calves, and he just walked on by, and I kind of missed couldn't pull my eyes away from her calves because they were just so beautiful.
Yeah.
That I just missed the opportunity to like gaze at Larry Fitzgerald as he walked on by. But to be honest, it's okay. That was a good moment that I had
Got
with
to
her
share
calves.
with those calves. Calves
Yeah.
are one of those things that I feel like you're born with, and you can like push it to a limit, but I mean even Dwight Howard, who is like one of the buffest dudes ever, does not have big calves.
It's true.
And if you don't have nice calves, you're just kind of like screwed the rest of your
Yeah.
life.
And even if you don't have big calves, like toned calves are so much better than not toned calves.
That's true. Like a cankle.
Oh, bad.
No,
That's
is
bad.
That is bad. But
That's
also,
what I'm working on. It's good stuff.
big calves are super cool. At least on guys. I've never really thought about calves on girls.
Yeah. To be honest, if they're too big, they kind of freak me out. But
I have yet to meet a pair of calves that I thought were too big in my entire life.
I had this weights coach named Coach Campbell.
Mm.
He was a great guy. I liked him a lot. And his calves were like Mr. Incredible calves.
Well, calves are kind of like a cool symbol of like athleticism. You know, like the it's not an obvious one. I think of that with calves and traps. Like people that just go to the gym and are kind of more casual. A lot of times they can get big arms, which is like level 1. You're like, oh, you just like are going for the most obvious muscle, and then, you know, then they'll get like a big chest, and they might get big quads. But people that are like really athletic or that stand out, and you're like, what looks different about that guy? It's usually their traps,
Right.
or their calves. Those are the things that people like forget to work out.
Right. Well, I was pretty muscly in high school and college, and my only insecurity ever was that my calves were not toned enough. Everything else I was kind of insecure that I was too toned because it was kind of in the era before the era we're in now where it's cool for girls to be super fit and super buff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like back when I was super fit and super buff, it was kind of still weird. So
I wouldn't know. I've never been super fit and super buff. I've been pretty fit. I've always been like on the cusp of fit, but never like, whoa, like, look at that guy. Now I'm kind of like getting older and I don't go to the gym as often. So now I'm just kind of like middle-aged, kind of fit dad look. Like he eats sweets, but you know, he doesn't pig out.
whatever.
He plays sports, but like he gets tired pretty fast. He wears a backwards hat, but it's like from the Gap, you know.
Says Daytona 500 on it.
That would be nice to get to be like jacked.
Let's do it.
For me, getting really ripped is very much like an all or nothing thing.
Yeah.
Because the amount of effort you have to put in to be totally ripped and the amount of effort you have to put in to just like not be unhealthy, they're very different,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to diet.
Totally.
But if you're already putting in all that effort, you might as well like go the extra mile and look good. And that's where I'm at right now, where I'm like, wow, I go to the gym, I try to eat healthy, but like I don't do quite enough that I end up ripped, but I still have to put in all the effort. So it kind of sucks. It's kind of like the worst place to be. It's like either I can enjoy my life and just be unhealthy, or I could like, oh, I'm already hating it. I might as well just push it even harder and be like jacked or something.
Right.
It's kind of the way my mind thinks.
I'm the same way, actually, with working out. There are some things in my life that I'm not as all or nothing with, but I feel like for the most part, I'm pretty all or nothing.
Yeah, which has its pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've always found that if I make like a really extreme goal, because it's exciting, it'll help me stick to it. And I'm like, wow, I could be like, if I were to think I'll be Mr. Olympia, then even though there's not really a chance of me being Mr. Olympia, it would excite me. So I'd be going to the gym and I'd be like, that would be intense and fun. And I'd be imagining myself as Mr. Olympia. And I'd probably end up just like a really fit guy. I would never reach Mr. Olympia.
Right.
But if I try to be just a really fit guy, then I'm always constantly negotiating with myself. Like, how much effort to how much reward? Like, okay, this is getting better, but now I have to put in more effort. And then you are always kind of trying to find the balance. Like, how much do I have to do in order to get to the range that I want to get to?
Right.
Instead of how much can I bear?
Right. See, the battle that I have is more with pride, which I know was going to surprise you that I said that. But I am so hardcore the kind of person that is like, if I don't think that I can be the very best,
Mm-hmm.
or that I even have a chance at accomplishing this, then I am not going to even try.
Right. Because it's like I'd rather be too cool for it
Mm-hmm.
and never try it
Yeah.
than try it and lose.
I am so that person. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it comes from the way I was raised, because a lot of my family has that same issue. But I also think that when it comes to athleticism, I never really... Not that I didn't have to work, because I worked really hard because I enjoyed it. It was my play.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really had any kind of rejection
Mm-hmm.
when it came to athleticism. And I don't know if I just can't handle the thought of... Like, I never didn't make a team. This
Right.
sounds really cocky, but it's... I don't know. I just think that's why I struggle, is because I'm a has-been now. And I don't like facing that.
That reality.
Yeah. I don't like facing the fact that I don't have muscle tone anymore, and I couldn't outrun anybody if I wanted to. I had this like crazy confidence that I could
Mm-hmm.
outrun anybody, even if they had like a faster 100 time than me, It was
Yeah.
like, but I could do it.
Yeah, I have that thought all the time. Like with anything that requires athleticism, like basketball or baseball or football or anything, I think to myself, well, I would rather just not play and live in the illusion that I could still be good than have to face the fact that when I go and play, I'm like getting, 6 inches off the ground.
Right. I think you're definitely like that with basketball.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the most, especially in comparison to how much you love it and how much you think about it and how much it is a part of your life,
Yeah.
Like
Well,
your whole Instagram feed is basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about that, is that in my mind, a lot of times I like winning and I like preparing alone
Yeah.
for a long time so that I can go and win. But I don't necessarily just love competing. There's like, I like the idea of going in and trying to dominate. I think
Yeah.
everyone does. But there's some people that get a rush out of like the uncertainty. A lot of people, like, well, because it's kind of a high when you win. But I have never liked that. I've always liked over preparing, like being kind of a psycho, so much that when the time comes to actually perform, then I'm going in really confident. And before that, I don't even really like to compete. I have to be like
Right.
so prepared. Otherwise, I avoid it, which I don't think is necessarily healthy.
Right. Well, that's how I am with volleyball. I love volleyball is just play to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't remember, even though I was super passionate about volleyball and I was always like, really into the games and I would get emotional, but it never felt the same as like losing a race
Mm-hmm.
to me,
Yeah.
And maybe it's because volleyball is more of a team sport and I loved playing volleyball. It was so fun to me. We should play volleyball.
We should
join
play.
volleyball.
I really enjoy volleyball.
It'd be so fun. It's just great. But then with track, it was a different story. Like, I just loved playing, and so practice was fun. The games were fun because it was just playing volleyball.
Yeah.
Even if we lost. Like, I got a good volleyball game out of it, usually. Track was not the same way. It was, like, made me angry. It made me fiery.
That's the way I am with
like,
basketball.
I wonder what that says, or, like, what that sense of pride, like having your identity wrapped up in your success, what that means for like down the road, like what that translates into for different people, like professionally, for their family life, like I wonder where we're going to be with that in 20 years.
Yeah, I can see pros and cons from it.
Yeah.
I think it's a pro to, have your identity keep you to a standard, but I can see why it would be negative if you can't come to terms with who you actually are because of the identity that you've created. Like, I've heard of that happening with ex-NBA players where they were in the NBA and then all of a sudden they're not in the NBA, they got older or whatever, and they can't handle the fact that they don't know who they are anymore.
Yeah.
It happens to a lot of people, the good old days. Uncle Rico, that's why, because they created an identity kind of in a vacuum. And then when they got out into more of the real world or they moved on, now they have to recreate themselves and they don't. I mean, I've gone through that, absolutely. I think everyone goes through to a certain extent.
Yeah, I would say we both have a little bit of that to an extent. I think that, actually, I don't know who has it worse. Maybe we both have it the same.
Yeah,
but
different ways.
It's been really painful for me to, like emotionally painful, to even like work out since like leaving on my mission after my year of collegiate track. It's hard because that was my whole identity. That's why I went to college. I was not going to college for a major, for grades, for a degree. I was going to college for track, and I was not ashamed of that at all, and I am now. But looking back, I just went on my mission so quick, and I had to change focus so quick, and then my identity was wrapped up in being a missionary. And then I came home, and it was like, oh, I don't know how to be at home if I'm not going to be like this athlete that was just, I don't know, on top of things. And it's really painful for me now. Like, I'm learning that, it takes work if you want to be an athlete. And I don't know. It's just been a humbling experience for me so far. And I, up until this point, have not been able to tackle that emotional anxiety that I have inside of me. Like, it keeps me from being super fit. There's nothing keeping me, except for right now, being pregnant. Like, I don't know how you can be super fit and pregnant at the same time. But, I don't know. It's just emotional for me, keeping me from being the best version of myself physically. It's hard.
No, I completely understand that, because as a kid, I would play basketball with the dream of, being in the NBA or something like that. And now I could totally just go and play with my friends or play with the old men on Tuesday mornings.
And enjoy it,
and have a great time, and I love it. but I do keep myself from doing it for some reason, because it does in a weird way represent like something that it's not anymore. It
This
represents
part of
like,
you that died.
yes, exactly. And it's strange because it shouldn't. You should be able to just like wake up and do it for a totally different reason. And I think maybe a part of that comes with like not wanting to let go of your childhood,
Yeah.
And like if you face it and it's now doesn't mean the same thing, maybe that just is like telling you that your childhood died, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think for me as well, I never felt like I closed that book. I never really wrapped it up in a pretty way, if that makes sense. Right. I ran track for that year up at NAU, and then my grades were just bad, and I just kind of had a really rough year, and there had been a lot of scary things that had happened, and I was just so ready to have the year be over with that I just kind of like ran away.
Yeah.
And I didn't take the time to like feel, because that was a huge thing. Like my track career was coming to an end. I knew that I was never going to run competitively again or jump competitively again. And it was like, yeah, I knew that, but I wouldn't let myself feel that. And I just kind of ran away and never touched it again until like, honestly, the last couple months where I've been like, oh, so that was hard. And it feels hard right now, and I should probably address it. And it sounds so funny because I was not anything special. It's not like I was this professional athlete that said goodbye to their winning career, But I wonder if that's common for like high school athletes that don't really ever get to see how far their potential could have gone, This like constant ache inside that that keeps them from really exploring their athleticism post teenage life, like into their adulthood.
Yeah, and I've seen the opposite of that too. People that in high school weren't athletic at all,
never got a shot. Yeah.
And now they've grown up and they're like, you know what? Like, I'm a grown man. I can try this out. And then they're super fit, or like all the guys that like run triathlons now and are way buff and really cool, like 27-year-olds.
All the girls that called me mean names because I had biceps, and now all they want to do, all they have is like Fitstagrams and stuff.
No, but I'm saying it in a positive way. Like all of the,
I know. I was just rolling my eyes.
All the guys that I knew, well, obviously not all of them, but I see a ton of guys now that are like really fit, or all of a sudden really good at basketball or something. Right. And they're not really any of them the guys that were like that in high school.
Yeah.
And I wonder what that says. I wonder if that same thing is applicable with like the cool kids a lot of times from high school, like the cool womanizer guy or whatever, the guy who's always at a party. Now that they're grown up, I wonder if they now like overindulge in that because that's where they feel like they have a connection to their youth, or if they do the opposite, if they like run away from it because like, they are afraid of
I obviously don't think it's super black and white, but I do think that it is very common to see someone who's peaked in high school.
It's like one of my biggest fears.
I know, right? I don't think you peaked in high school. I think your life's gotten better since then.
Well, it hasn't been that long since I graduated high school.
That's fair. Anyway, I think it is really common to see people that were top dog in high school not ever do anything else, not really ever get anywhere else. Now, like I said, I don't think it's that black and white, but
right.
Yeah.
I wonder what is the biggest time period for people to make their identity, their like lifetime identity. I wonder if most people do that in high school. Or I know you hear of some people that are like, I knew right what I wanted to be, or like what career I wanted to have when I was in elementary school or whatever. And I wonder if that's a lot of people, or some people discover themselves in college. It's interesting to think about.
I do think that those years in high school are very formative years.
Yeah.
They form how you handle the next phase of life, which is that awkward in-between phase where you don't really have a plan. Some people do have a plan, but even if you do have a plan, it's just still hard. It's expensive. It's painful. It's a lot of growing pains, moving out of your parents' house, paying rent for the first time. I don't know.
Yeah.
All of that. But like when you're in that state, I think you do like draw back on your identity in high school, like draw from what that was in high school to then make your plan moving forward.
Yeah. It's something I've thought about a lot. Like you kind of live under the illusion that you are self-made, you know, and you feel like your interests are your interests because that's just who you are.
Yeah.
And I like to tell myself that. But then I think back and I'm like, how many people have influenced my mind for the rest of my life that they don't even know it? Like I sat next to so-and-so on the bus in 7th grade and they became my friend.
Right.
So I started dressing in a certain way and I started watching certain shows. And now I don't even know that person anymore and I still do those things. Like you hear about people that started, you know, smoking when they were in 7th grade and now they're 60 years old and they're addicted. Yeah. It's like if I wouldn't have sat next to that person 60 years ago or whatever. But then the argument can also be made, like you should have enough, you know, responsibility over your own life that you can't just blame your circumstances. You can't just say like, well, you know, I had bad influences when I was a kid, or, you know, things didn't work out, because people in every type of situation, you know, poor people, rich people, all over basically the United States, because of the way they were born, it can totally lead to a different outcome.
Totally.
And so it's weird to think, you know, like why do I like the things I like? Is it because it actually fits me?
Yeah. Or
is it because I was influenced and I never knew it?
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like when you have a song stuck in your head. I had this today, actually. I was singing a song. It was like Wonderful World or something like that. And I was just singing it and I was singing it and I was singing it. And I like was on and off my phone because I was doing homework. And I opened up my phone and there was an ad that was like, what a wonderful world. And it was the last thing opened up on my Instagram.
Right.
And I was thinking, I was like, oh yeah, I saw that like 20 minutes ago. And I thought that I had...
That song didn't just like pop into my head.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I thought that I was just thinking of that. You know, and if you would have asked me, I would have given you some justification for why. I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, I just like that song.
I'm just feeling good.
But actually, it was from the ad.
Interesting.
And I wonder how often that happens.
Probably a lot more than we think or want to admit.
I think, especially when it comes to like marketing, I think we all think that we're immune to it. But like, no one is.
Yeah,
you know?
I would agree.
So it's kind of weird to, like, how much of my ideas are my own?
Yeah.
How much are my friends, my parents, the TV I watch, the people I follow?
Well, I think that can be kind of a difficult rabbit hole to go down, because it just ends up driving you crazy at the end, I think. I feel like you're in Inception or something.
Right.
But I feel like we always end up talking about this, that it's really good. In fact, it's bad if you don't challenge your beliefs, you know, like challenge, you know, why is it that I'm doing this? And we've talked about that a lot, like living a more intentional life, waking up and saying, what is it that I want to do today? Like, we'd love to get to the point where we can just wake up and have enough financial freedom where we can say, what is it that I want to do today, and just be able to do it, and not have anything stand in our way, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes that's like be responsible, and sometimes that's playing. But I think in that same line, everyone has a responsibility, no matter what background they come from. I do think that there are a lot of people, obviously, that come from way, way, way harder backgrounds than others. But I think that everyone has the same responsibility to, at a certain point, forgive the situation and just like take accountability for their life, you know, to own their life.
For their own good.
And I think that maybe in a small, really silly way, I need to do that with track, with my athletic career. You know, it's like, okay, let that be what it was. Do not send that down the drain, because that was a beautiful part of your life.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be bitter Uncle Rico, like you said.
Yeah.
And I don't want to keep myself from being athletic and fit for the rest of my life. I mean, I really enjoyed when that was part of my identity, and I don't think it'll ever be my identity in the same way. You know, I'm not going to be an Olympian, but I would enjoy an active lifestyle. I really thrive in that category, and so I need, along with so many other probably more important aspects of my life, need to look at that and say, yeah, I'm going to let that be what it was, and then I'm going to grow up and take accountability for what's in front of me, and I'm going to just work out. I don't know. I think that with abusive parents as well, or like anyone's parents, to be frank, like, you know, it's hard when you have that day where you realize you're, like, your dad, who's been your hero your whole life, can't do everything.
Right.
You know? And it's an even harder day when you realize, like, as much as your parents tried, as hard as your parents tried and as good of a job they did, they still screwed you up in some way, you know?
Yeah.
Like, my pride. I think that my parents struggle with the same kind of pride that I do, and I do think that I got that from them. I have a choice what I do with that now. Yeah. Which is, I guess, my point is we all have to forgive our parents at some point in our life for how they screwed us up, because everybody's parents have screwed their children up in some way. Right. And you know, nobody gets it exactly right for everybody.
Right, because, I mean, parents are imperfect, and they're insecure, and they're figuring it out. I have always tried to think, like, if everything is my fault, like, if you take blame and responsibility for everything, even when it's clearly not your fault, it actually gives you a lot more control of your life. Yeah. And it's a lot scarier and a lot harder, because that with that comes an adoption of responsibility.
Definitely. Yeah.
Which means, you know, if it's my fault that I'm, you know, overweight, or if it's my fault that I'm depressed, or if it's my fault that I have bad grades, or it's my fault that I'm not happy, even though those things may not be the case at all. Like, I'm not in any way saying that people who have those things should blame themselves. Yeah. But if you do blame yourself as like a trick, it actually frees your life up. Yeah. Because then you don't live, you know, on the whim of anything else. Like, if you blame things, even if you're justified, then that thing still has control over you. If you think, well, I can't make enough money because my boss just won't pay me. Yeah. Instead of thinking, this is my fault, you know, I must not be performing, or I must have chosen the wrong place to work, or whatever. If you twist it in a way that gives you responsibility, all of a sudden you can also take action. Yeah. And your whole life becomes in your control. Right. And I've tried to do that even to, like, in the most radical way, and it's hard because it's a lot easier to
and
say.
Sometimes there is blame to be put on other people. Yeah.
But I just try to do that because even if there is blame to give other people, it's nice to give it to yourself, because then at least you can do something. I mean, what good is it going to do to blame someone if nothing can change? You know, if you blame yourself, then you can at least be, well, if I'm the problem, then what can I do to make it different?
I honestly think that's the key to living an intentional life. We talk about that a lot, because it just sounds so good, you know? Yeah. And especially where, like, I think we all have examples in our life, whether it's family or friends or just people we've observed, that very obviously do not live an intentional life, just kind of let their life pass by them.
Just let it happen.
It's scary, you know, like, they're glazed over and they have no feeling, they're numb, and I think that is real depression, you know, when you are past feeling
You have no control.
Uh-huh.
And there's only blame.
Yeah. And it's very freeing. And I think it fills you with more gratitude, which I feel is very important to success. Like to be grateful for your surroundings and acknowledge where it comes from, and then be able to move forward. Even if that's from yourself, like just to be grateful you are where you are.
Yeah.
And to be able to appreciate it. But yeah, I think you're very right.
I think it's also true that your level of gratitude and your amount of blame and responsibility that you put out into the world doesn't change depending on your status in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one thing that surprised me is that, when I got a job or when I, made more money or less money or I was successful or sad, having those things changing, I always somehow rebalanced to the way I always felt. It's like if you're making $1 million a year, if you're a person who complains and you're a person who has a bad attitude, then you'll be complaining making $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Just
definitely.
as much as if you made $40,000
Totally.
a year. And the
Yeah.
opposite's true too. Like if a person is very, very grateful, then they lose everything. If that's really who they are, then they'll still have the same amount of gratitude because that comes from them. It's not a result of their environment. It's what creates their environment.
Yeah. Yeah. You're very right. Like, you can't just sit and be crabby and ungrateful and have a bad attitude and just, sit there waiting for that day to come that everything works out. Because then I don't know, you get to that point and that's the habit that you formed for yourself. That's the thought process you've given yourself. That's the state of mind you have. And
I think about trying to tie my emotions, or rather, like have my emotions affect my environment rather than the environment affect my emotions.
Absolutely.
That's like a goal that I really would love to have, and it's not really a goal because you never really get there. There's no way to measure it, but that seems like a really ideal way to be, is to I have my emotional state, and then let me go act on that emotional state in the world rather than being reactive to everything that happens to you.
Yeah.
Being like, well, I'll be grateful when I get the raise, and obviously I'm sad when bad things happen, but if you can be grateful all the time, and it's not easy to do that, but if you could, I actually think that would change your life. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. Well, and it saves you from being caught in situations where there is blame to give, I mean, obviously you can't control everyone else's actions, but if you are always taking accountability for your own life and taking responsibility for what you can control, then I don't feel like you get screwed over as much, because you're in control. And then you're not as eager to put blame on anyone else when things don't go your way.
Yeah. And it's an interesting feeling because even if you tell yourself you're in control and bad things happen, and you think like, oh, I'll take responsibility for my life, so I'm taking control, so I'm going to turn things around. And you live in, let's say, a false assumption of your own control, but you live your life that way your entire life, I feel like you'd still be happier.
Yeah.
It's like I've always said, I think you'd be happier living in pursuit of a dream your whole life, even if you never get it.
Yeah.
Than never pursuing that dream at all. And because you hear people say, well, don't pursue something, especially something that is outrageous, because then there's disappointment and there's pain and there's failure. Right. When in reality, if you choose not to pursue something, a dream or control in your life or take responsibility, if you choose not to take that stance, then you've automatically chosen to not be happy.
Yeah.
You've already chosen disappointment. You chose disappointment on round one rather than living your whole life thinking maybe one day, it'll all culminate. Maybe you'll have your dream, maybe that. I don't think that you should wait to be happy until you achieve something, but I think that the pursuit of achieving a dream should make you happy, and I think it does.
Yeah. I like that.
It's kind of like with a kid. If your idea with having a kid is that you want a really great 30-year-old, it's like, oh man, I have this baby. I cannot wait till they're 30 so that I can have a tax-paying adult that'll take care of me.
Right.
Then when they get 30, you're right. If they're not the way you wanted and that goal comes and the finish line comes and you don't like the result, I could see why you're disappointed. But I don't think that's what like pursuing dreams and going after goals and is all about.
Right.
I think it's about finding something that pulls you along, that all the steps along the way are fulfilling. Yeah. Like raising a kid.
Well, I know people that have done that, that have said to their kids, I'll like you when you're older.
Yeah.
I'll like you when you're an adult. And I think everybody goes through phases like that with their parents, especially in those annoying like puberty years. But
well, and you want something. Yeah. And if you want only the destination, then when you get there, it's never going to be as good.
What a missed opportunity. Yeah. I actually just remembered this funny story that kind of like ties into what we're talking about, but I was so careless with my running shoes in high school. So bad. I was so spoiled. My parents always gave me the nicest running shoes. And I would just like forget to lock my locker. Or I would leave them on the field while I went and ran my race because I would put my track spikes on, which were a whole different pair of shoes. And I would come back, either the next day to the locker or come back to that spot in the field hours later after I had ran my race and just be so shocked that they weren't there. And I did that a lot, like almost every single pair of running shoes I've ever owned, especially in high school, just were gone. And I spent a lot of time like being so mad that someone had stolen my running shoes, And I finally, I think it was with help from my parents because they were like, what's the common denominator here? After like my 7th pair of missing shoes, I'd come home and be like, I don't know where they are. Sorry. It's like so stupid. But after I kind of like realized like, oh, I should probably care a little bit more about my stuff so that I can keep my nice stuff and not have to go without, And luckily my parents were very great. And we had, some conversations about it because they weren't super pleased with me. Right. But, I don't think they ever would have had me go without. But it was good for me to get to that point. I know this is kind of a stupid example, but to get to that point where I was like, yeah, I should probably care. I should probably take some measures and lock my locker or put my shoes in a safe place with someone else or something so that I don't have to go without and I don't have to be in this awful, terrible situation where I don't get to run anymore because I don't have the right shoes. And anyway.
I remember the first time that I realized that if I didn't buy groceries, I didn't eat.
Right.
And that was like, this is such a big moment.
Like
oh,
what?
God, what the freak? Like, Mom... Oh, wait, no, I'm the only one that lives here. Yeah. And, like, if I don't take out the trash, it stinks, and it only affects me. Right. Because I was the worst at that as a kid. Like, in my house, it was always, like, trying to just get rid of responsibility.
Yeah, and wait as long as you possibly could. Yeah.
Make it someone else's fault.
Well, I'm still like that with a lot of things, like taxes.
Oh, it's like if you don't look at it, it'll just go away.
Yeah, it's not happening. Yeah, and that's not true.
That's hard. And I think sometimes the more you do it, the harder it gets. Like, the more you get, you actually don't even notice things that you should change because your brain is, like, immediately like, oh, don't even think about that. Right. It's like a traumatic experience, where, like, people, like, log it away and they forget it because it's too painful. It's like, in a small degree, that happens all the time just in your normal life where there's things you just don't want to think about. Like, if you knew you did really bad on a test, you're just like, I'm not going to look I'm not gonna look online to see what I got. And then pretty soon, like, that it affects them a lot more than that.
Totally.
Like, you stop looking at any of your grades because you don't want to see that one thing.
Yeah.
Or you stop paying your bills because you know one of them's late or whatever.
Well, and once you do that with one thing, it becomes so much easier to do it with a ton of other things.
To just
you know?
not look because it feels better.
Like, the more you do face those things, the easier it gets to, like, face other difficult things.
I've definitely had that when I was in debt. Or when and you're like, oh, I don't want to look at my bank account right now because
it just hurts.
I'm in debt, or like I have so little money or whatever. So like I'll just not look at it, and that's so irrational.
Yeah.
But it happens all the time.
Totally. Yeah.
Because it's not the rational part of your brain that makes those decisions.
No. I was thinking about this actually earlier when you were talking about parenting and I've just been thinking a lot about how I feel. Like kind of facing the beginning of my own personal parenthood, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's given me really tender feelings about my parents and how much, like how true it is that we grew up together, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, and I'll probably watch this back in like 5 years or something, or even in like 6 months when I have a newborn. And I'm just struggling really hard, but I don't feel the weight of it yet. And I don't know, maybe people do before they have a kid. I don't know. I don't feel scared yet, and I know I should.
Right.
You know, because it is the biggest thing we'll ever do. It's the longest thing we'll ever do. Like, it is for life. But I was talking to someone today, and I just told them, like, I feel like I'm just bringing my little friend into the world, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a good thing that I am not, like, putting this pressure on myself to, like, I don't know. I just don't think I'm really grasping it. Like, you are his mother.
Like, you are his lifeblood.
You are his life source. You're his food. You're, like, everything he's going to know about the world for a long time is going to come from your home. And I just, for some reason, that's not really weighing me down yet.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it should. It feels like a really big thing. And yet I am so okay with it, and it's weird. I'm so okay with this little guy coming because I think it's because my parents just did such a good job, and I know they worked really hard at it, but they like helped me to know that we were in this together. And they were my parents and they were teaching me, but also we were growing up together. And I think that I've just given myself permission to not get everything right already. And I don't know if that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, like, accepting the fact that you're not going to do it right is a really good way to find peace, I think.
I don't know. I guess I'll tell you in 20 years if that's a blessing or a curse. But I feel this just peace, this overwhelming peace. That like everything's gonna be fine, and then I can think about like, oh, but there's like such a different world than when I grew up, and there's so much more that kids are up against, and mental health is so much more of an issue, and there's people shooting up schools all the time, and but then like I don't worry. Like, I think about all those things and I can acknowledge that those are scary, but it doesn't fit into how I feel about being a parent. And I don't know why that is.
I think that that's good. I think that, that might be a survival mechanism.
Probably.
Because if you carry the weight of an entire life, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to screw up anything, you try not to screw up anything will probably cause more damage.
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
And so I think it's good. I come from that. I feel the same way. It's like, it's not that I'm not worried about the things that our kid will have to face, but it's kind of the same thing I worry about myself. Like, I could go out and fail every single day. You can always be ridiculed. You can always fail. You can always hurt yourself. But that's kind of what it's all about. And so I imagine that our kid is going to have the same opportunity to succeed and fail. And because of that, that's kind of what makes the experience worth it.
Right.
And so I'm not afraid of bad things happening. Well, it's not that I'm not afraid, but it's not something that I stay up, thinking
right, that
about.
cripples you with
doesn't
fear.
cripple me.
Yeah.
I do feel that fear, but I don't let that change my behavior, because I want our kid to have the full experience of life, and that is pain,
right,
as well as joy.
Yeah.
And I want them to know that it's okay to fail, and it's okay to try and suck at stuff, and
Yeah.
to lose friends, and to be dumped. Because if we try and keep them from everything, and if we try and protect them from everything, I feel like that would only backfire.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I really like that. I think that we're feeling the same way. I think you explained what I'm feeling really well, actually. Because I do feel like I was saying, when I think about like all the things that can happen in a person's life, or like I've watched, really hard things happen to people I know recently, and I've just kind of put that in the context of our life, and like, oh my gosh, I cannot imagine already. I don't even have my kid here, and I cannot imagine having that happen. When I think about that, I do feel that fear. That's like, oh.
Yeah.
But it really does not fit into the context of how I feel about being a parent. And I think that that could probably sound like I'm treating motherhood too casually to some people. But I actually think, for me, it's the exact opposite. I think that I just have complete faith and like this really strong belief that if like we approach parenthood as like this experience that we go through together with our kids, like we can't fail, like if we're in it with them and we're in the trenches with them and celebrating their triumphs with them, like there's nothing that we can't overcome.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel casual to me,
Yeah.
It feels very, very real and very serious, and like the best thing that we could ever invest our time into,
Yeah, I completely agree. I have tried to remove expectations as much as I can, and that's always, hard, but when it comes to our kids and our family, and because it's not like most things, it's not like you can set a goal for how your kid is going to be.
No. No. Yeah.
And I want to be able to be happy with whoever our kid turns out to be. And that's hard, because you want your kid, I think, to be like you. You also want them to be different than you and better than you in some ways, or like what you never were able to do.
Right.
You want to bring into the next generation. And so if my kid doesn't like any of the things that I like, and if he's nothing like me, or if he's exactly like me, I have to realize that that is its own life, totally independent of me. And I'm really only there to be, shelter and love and a guide.
Right.
But I'm not there to try and, piece together the type of person. I'm not making a person. I'm raising a person, but I feel like they come, fully formed.
As they are. Yeah, I would agree.
in just about every way.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, there are things that we can do to help mold him, but he's coming as he is.
Yeah,
he already, like, I feel his little personality in me,
Yeah.
you know, with like how he moves. And
I think we just cultivate an environment where he can be the best version of himself by giving him confidence and giving him love and knowing that the way we feel about him is not tied. It's unconditional. You know, it's not tied to anything.
Yeah.
And I think that brings confidence into a relationship. I think we need a home that feels safe.
Smells good.
Yeah. People he can talk to. And also, I really feel strongly about having a type of like environment where he feels like he can try things and like try and fail, and then that's okay.
And have it be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's something I think both of us struggle with, and just about everyone in the world, is that, you know, that there's the stereotype, like the
letting
parent.
ourselves fail.
Yeah, like, you know, the parent that's so pushy and always wants better and always demands more. Like, I want my kid to succeed. I want them to be the best version of themselves, but I want that for them, not for me.
Yeah.
And that might come back to bite me because my kid might be so different, you know, than me, or might be totally, his version of success might totally not match mine or whatever. That's something I'll probably have to work on forever.
Yeah.
But I want him to feel like his life is his own.
Yeah.
And he can go for anything and
Right.
have that confidence. But I guess we'll see.
And have a home base here with us.
Yeah.
My heart burns like on fire when I think about him.
Yeah.
Which is all the time. So I probably just have heartburn. I don't know. But
my stomach kills for my baby.
I love him.
Me too.
And I really like him.
I can't wait to meet him.
He's got a cute face.
It's kind of weird to think, like, I always think about this for some reason. Like, what if we were the same age? Like, the only difference between us and the baby is that we are adults and, like, we know all these things. We've been around, we're developed, and that's a baby. And so, like, we're teaching them how to become an adult. And then by the time they become an adult, we'll be, like, older, and it kind of always feels like your parents are beyond your, you know, beyond your understanding. But I wonder, like, as you get older and you're an adult with your parents, you can kind of finally see, like, oh, they're just like me. They're just farther along on the path.
Yeah.
And I think some parents have, like, a possessive feeling towards their kids. Like, that's my baby. And they see them as a baby. But when I think of our child, like, what is he going to be like at my exact same age? Like, he is... got a complete personality.
We're gonna be so old.
And, like, just because I'm his dad doesn't mean that, you know, I know exactly what's right for him, or that I have a say in who he is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, you're right. Yeah, our parents were doing what we're doing right now one time.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird? I don't know. I feel like I'm the same age as him, though. Like, it's funny that you said that. I genuinely feel like my life is beginning with his.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I mean, I know how to eat, and I know how to sleep, and I know how to walk and talk and write things. I know how to have good handwriting. That's about all I can do. But I really do feel like he marks the start of, like, my new life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a wee babe.
It's so weird to think that our parents lived this much before we were even born.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like it marks the start of my life too. Yeah, it will never ever be the same. It'll always be at least us 3, maybe us 5, who knows? Maybe us 6. But you can never go back.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary.
I remember like sitting there talking to you when I told you we were pregnant. Like sitting there in the Costco parking lot, just like kind of tripping out a little bit.
Yeah.
And we both felt like this overwhelming feeling of like, what were we doing before this? Like we had forgotten.
Yeah.
Everything that had happened in our day, let alone in our week, in our year. Like, what have we been doing up until this point? I cannot remember.
It's so funny. It seemed like nothing else mattered. Like that morning we'd been talking about things I had to do for school and work and your business. And then all of a sudden we're like, why are we running around playing all these little games that now we have a life to think
so
about?
Seems so trivial. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. And it's funny because we talked about how, I think we had joked about like how if we had had a baby, if we had gotten pregnant at that time, it would have been like the worst timing ever. And, and then we got pregnant and it was the most beautiful feeling ever. Like there was no doubt in my mind that it was the right timing. It just felt good. And I've never not been grateful. Even through like the morning sickness, like my worst morning sickness phase and all the like aches and pains and the no sleep with pregnancy, like it's never been this, oh, I hate my life, you know? Like I'm getting my little bestie at the end of this.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
I get excited for different phases a lot. Like I get excited for the idea of having a baby, you know, because it's like babies are so cute and fun and, you know, like totally change their dynamic. And sometimes I get really excited to have like a 12-year-old. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I know.
They'll be like this
cute
kid.
And awkward.
And like we'll have interests and then we'll like be all excited.
Maybe he'll go through a chubby phase.
Oh, I hope so. And he'll be like playing, you know, the tuba. And he'll suck way bad.
And we'll both glasses.
Be like, you're so great. We love you so much. And I'm like, man, he freaking sucks. Like I can't wait to get excited over like his little drawings and like his like he'll decorate a cookie and it'll suck and it'll taste gross but I'll still eat it.
But you'll be so proud of
like,
him.
This is the greatest cookie I've ever had.
I mean, think about how you are with Callum. Like everything that Callum does, you're just like, what?
And like I get so excited just because that's who I am. And then when there's a little kid that like doesn't judge me for acting like a little kid, I'm like, oh freak yeah. Like we're at Disneyland and like, yeah, like it's Buzz. And now I have an excuse to like get excited and like, oh, it's like because it's my kid. Like, nah, don't worry about it. But I would have been like that anyway.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah.
Now I have like a way to hide it. No, I seriously. So I really do get excited for like a toddler and we can watch TV shows with and like, you know, Christmas morning with. And then a baby that like you can't do any of that stuff. You know, there's no like they don't have the same personality, but
sweet little coos
like a sweet energy everywhere. And then sometimes honestly, it's weird. I think about like having like a grown man,
an adult son,
like a 25-year-old son, and like watching him do stuff and like seeing the way he thinks and his ambitions or his creativity, and it's just so crazy to think. You would think that having a kid would be like, wait, did the alarm go off?
No.
Okay.
I didn't hear it, but you can check it.
No.
You have like this internal clock that
I know.
rings at 15.
You would think that having a kid would be like me plus you, 1 + 1 = 2. You know? And it'd be like all of my attributes and all of your attributes, and then we'll like pick and choose, and it'll be like a mixture. But it's so weird, like knowing all that, like my younger siblings when they're born, or our baby, or my nephew. It's not me plus you equals the combination.
Right.
It's like me plus you somehow completely makes a new thing.
Yeah.
That is totally different, and I'm excited. You know, like who is he?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, we're totally going to be those parents that are like, look, he raised his eyebrow. Oh my gosh, it's the coolest thing ever.
Instagram, you're not going to believe this.
I made that.
Yeah, it's like 500 days in a row of like, look how cute he is.
Yeah.
And then like just our grandmas by the 500th day are like, thank you for posting this. I know everyone else has unfollowed you. I'm so like that. I'm already like, everyone cares so much more about the things that I do.
Maddie's wearing a new shirt.
Maddie has a new shirt. Maddie plucked her eyebrows this morning. And like,
Thanks.
I'm so like that with our kid. It's going to be so bad.
Dad, you're embarrassing me.
I'm going to seriously be like, oh my gosh. Every little thing, like, call everyone. Like, Mom, guess what? Like, he had Cheerios for the first time. It was so cute.
He spilled this all over himself. I don't know.
And people do that too. You're like, oh yeah, he's a baby.
Cool.
Babies do
so
stuff like that.
He's really normal.
So it's like, yeah, just the miracle of life.
Just living life, huh?
We got 7 billion of them.
But like, I mean, we made him.
Yeah.
That's cool. We made a human that can do that. Anyway, I am really excited to take him to Disneyland. Yeah. And I don't know if I'm most excited about that right now because I just want to go to Disneyland.
I'm excited to take him to the next Jazz game.
But like, I can't wait till he's old enough to just see the magic,
Yeah.
And I feel the same way about Christmas morning. Like, I think it's going to be 10 times, 100 times more fun than any other Christmas morning that I've ever had. Because those are the most magical days of my life, Disney days and Christmas morning days.
Yeah.
And getting to see that through his eyes and, like, just try to see his brain, like, try to add things up, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, like that face that kids have when they're, like, so excited. They're, like, don't know what to do with them. Christmas,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love you.
I love you.
That's a wrap.